guys follow the channel, you'll know I've followed the development of the MPX from Sig for quite some time. And it's an interesting gun. I'm glad to see it on the market because it does things a little bit differently than other PCCs out there. And this isn't technically a PCC because this is a handgun with the brace, but everybody's familiar now with the term PCC, which stands for pistol caliber carbine. Now this gun's very easy to SBR and turn it into an actual carbine, and that's true of a lot of different products that are on the market. But as this one stands, it's a braced pistol. This is the Copperhead. This is probably the smallest PCC you're gonna find out there, and I think that's what Sig was targeting when they designed this handgun. There was some information out there that I originally believed myself that this was a trials gun for the Army submachine gun contract, and this is not. From what I gathered from either Soldier Systems or maybe the Firearms blog, this actually is not the trials gun. This gun apparently was made specifically for the civilian marketplace, which I applaud. I hate it when companies turn their backs to the civilian marketplace and focus strictly on military contracts. It's nice that the gun companies support the civilian ownership. So this is a cool little gun. Now you'll notice right away though, my gun's different than what you're seeing elsewhere in pictures, and especially of pictures of the factory configuration of this firearm. So in essence, what I did is I took the original barrel that was on the gun and replaced it with the barrel from In Lead We Trust. And the barrel slightly longer, gives me a tri-lug and a 1/2x28 thread. I also removed the factory brace and replaced it with an SB Tactical side folding brace. The original factory brace was a telescoping kind of retractable brace system, and this one is a folding system, which I kind of prefer. I just like the way it works. I think it looks sharp on the gun. It's a right mix of black and brown or copper head color, FDE, whatever you want to call it. On top of it, I do have a Trijicon Mro, and this is one of their green MROs. And I'm playing with it, trying to see how I like the green dot versus the red dot. I'm so used to seeing red dots for decades that it's taken me a little while to warm up to the whole green dot system. And then on top of that is a low mount from Midwest Industries. So we're going to talk more in depth about the Copperhead here this afternoon and have a little bit of fun at the range. Now this does require Gen 2 magazines. So the early guns like I have one of, the early MPXs had different magazines, and then they made a generational change. They came out with a different magazine. These have brown or flat dark earth followers. My early ones I believe have black followers. And so you want to make sure that you use the right magazines with the guns, because even though the magazines may work with the first gen mags may work with the second gen guns and vice versa, you may run into problems. You're gonna find the first gen mags extremely affordable online right now, which is why I keep my first gen gun. I've bought them for as little as 20 bucks because the new ones are like 65 bucks. So if you're gonna go out there and buy $20 MPX magazines, you don't wanna pick up the really cheap ones if you have a Gen 2 gun, because you may run into problems with it, okay? So I'm gonna load the gun up. With the bolt home, it's a little bit hard sometimes to pull the charging handle to the rear. Kind of hangs up a little bit, let it go home, make sure that thing's seated. And this is a 30-round mag. It ships with a 20-round mag, which I'll show you here in a second. What a great shooting little gun. I love this little thing. It's small, it's handy, and Sig was really trying to dominate that super small PCC market, and they certainly have accomplished it. And we'll talk more about these changes that I've made and why I've made them in this video. One of the first things I wanted to change was the collapsible brace. The collapsible brace that comes with the gun, I mean, it looks good, and you can collapse it by pressing the button here, and it'd slide forward, and these rods would ride inside of this dished out area along the side of the upper receiver. So the brace would collapse backwards and forwards. The one thing that I didn't particularly like about this brace and why I changed it is because when you open the brace up and take the strap out, you'll see that it's just a little bit awkward in that it can spin completely around. So if you're trying to use it and it's in a weird position, it may make it more difficult for you to use. You have to reorient the brace to make use of it very quickly. So I'm just not a fan of this particular design. Does it work? Absolutely it does, but I favor the side folding system of the FS 1913. Sig designed it so you can make a choice. You can easily remove this original brace and replace it with something else. They machined a 1913 pick rail in the rear so you can put what you want on there. And it's that type of modularity that I really have to applaud. Then we get down to the barrel. Why did I change the barrel? Let me find the original barrel here. So I was talking to the guys over in Lead We Trust because I wanted to suppress this. If you guys follow us, you know that we like to suppress everything. So here's the original factory barrel. And it has this little castle crown cut to the top of the barrel that you're probably familiar with. Some people call it a pig nose barrel or whatever. But so I was asking the guys over in Lead We Trust, what was the purpose of this device? And this is what they said, that the gun was purposely machined, as best that they could tell. This barrel was purposely machined so that you couldn't thread this barrel, because in reality, the chamber starts right about here. The 9mm round will set right about where my 2 index fingers are. Then you only have about 1.5 inches or maybe 2 inches of barrel. And so the barrel's really, really short. And here you can see its little gas piston right there with its little gas adjustment. So this is still a piston-driven system, even with that really, really short barrel. It's tapping gas off the second that bullet starts to leave the case. So he said that he believes that they did that to keep people from purposely suppressing the gun, because that would really mess with the dwell time and could cause the gun to open up before the bullet had completely exited the suppressor and gas and particulate maybe come out the ejection port. I don't know. Sig was, again, targeting the larger community, because the suppressor community is relatively small by comparison. They were targeting the broader community with the smallest possible gun they could make. But they also made the gun so incredibly modular that the third party could rise up, like in Lead We Trust, and I could just simply remove 2 screws, slide the old barrel out, slide the new one in, and now I have a tri-lug capability and a 1/2x28 suppressor thread on the end. Carbon's already started to seize it up a little bit, which is good because I like using tri-lug adapters because they're quick to use and the suppressor doesn't back off. So that's why I made the 2 changes that I did. And it's, again, really cool that the aftermarket community is stepping up to allow you to modify firearms like the Copperhead to your particular use. Now, some folks are going to say that they don't like the pistol grip on this gun. I'm trying to find an open pocket here really quick. Some folks will say they don't like the pistol grip, and I have this on my Rattler, which I also love. The Rattler is an amazing firearm. This pistol grip, once you get used to it, it really isn't all that bad. It's very small, handy. It does look a little bit awkward, but you can replace it because it's a standard AR-15 grip up here. But I'm not going to replace it because I've actually gotten used to it on my Rattler and on this, and I have no problem with it. So again, it's modular. Don't like it? Swap it out. Taking the Copperhead apart is really no different than any other MPX gun in the family tree of these types of firearms. So first you want to make sure that the chamber is clear. This one is. It's on safe. It has an AR-15 style captive push pin front and rear pin. I'm just going to pop out this rear pin. You may want to apply some downward pressure when you push this pin across. It'll make it a little bit easier on you, and I'll show you why here in a second. When you open it up, inside you're going to find everything looks fairly familiar if you're used to seeing the MPX out in the wild. The only real difference being this rear section of the lower receiver where they would have their collapsible brace from the factory. This one's been replaced with the SB Tactical version, but they put a pick rail back here, which is nice modularity. Inside though, you'll notice there's this little silicone accu wedge, which it's known as in the AR-15 world. They've been around forever. And what that does is take out any slop there might be between the upper and the lower. People can be kind of funny about that slop in the upper and lower with regards to AR-15s. Some people think that degrades accuracy, when in reality, most of the accuracy is actually in the upper with the barrel and the bolt and all the other things like that. The fitment between the two upper, or between the upper and lower halves, really has very little to do with accuracy. But that's probably to keep the poor guys that have to answer the customer service phone calls from getting calls saying, well, there's wobble in my upper and lower, and them trying to explain to them it's not a problem. So it's nice that they put that in there. That's an evolutionary change. I've seen other versions of either the MCX or the MPX, but they had a little detent system where they drilled a hole in there, they tapped it, they put a little spring in a detent that would apply pressure upwardly onto this, this little lug right here. And now it's much more simple with the accu wedge. To take the bolt and carrier out, just pull back on the T-handle, which is ambi, and the bolt and carrier will slide right out of the gun, and the T-handle will fall right on the ground. I'm not going to detail strip this. This is a current generation MPX bolt and carrier system. There's no shortage of videos out there showing you how to further detail strip this particular component. And yes, this gun, despite its really short barrel, is a gas piston gun. Let me grab my T-handle. It is ambi. So I'm not going to disassemble it any further. I just wanted to show you guys really, besides the barrel length, there's not a whole lot of difference in terms of the internal components. The barrel length and of course this rear block area of the lower receiver. Putting it back together, put the little T-handle in its guide. And just like an AR-15, you want to make sure that bolt is forward. It fits in such a way that you can just shake it downward like an AR-15. Drop it in there. And push it forward. And then just close her up. Squeeze a little bit because you do have that tensioner in there. And you'll be able to push that pin right across. And the gun's back together. We're going to do some shooting with the suppressor on the Copperhead. And right now we have some 115 grain ball rounds from our friends over at Federal. They do supply the ammunition to the channel for free, and we greatly appreciate that. If you guys would like to pick up some of the ammunition for yourself, Federal or otherwise, swing by 2awarehouse.com and check them out. A bunch of really good guys over there. And so this is the standard 20-round magazine that comes with the gun. These are relatively expensive. Okay, they're going to be in the high $60 price range, either for the 20-rounder or even the 30-rounder, but they're both available on the SIG website or even at places like Gun Mag Warehouse. And make sure you buy the proper second-gen magazine. So we now have a silencer co suppressor on the end with a tri-lug adapter, and this is a good opportunity to talk about the benefits of either direct thread or the tri-lug and the downsides to each. So the positive about the tri-lug adapter is it's very quick to put on and very quick to take off, and it's positive, it won't walk off the gun while you're using it. The downside is there's 3 different ways you can put it on the barrel. And in my experience, especially with this can, when you put it on, you may find that your point of impact has shifted up to 6 inches at 20 yards or so, and then you take it off and rotate it over one and push it back on, and that point of impact comes up. So that's the downside to a tri-lug gun in some aspects. Some people won't have that issue, but generally you may run into that problem. So with a direct thread can, it's going to do the exact same thing the same way every time you thread it to the gun. However, when you put the can on the gun, your point of impact might shift based upon being suppressed or unsuppressed. The downside is that can walk off, so you want to make sure that you keep checking it with a gloved hand or a protected hand, so you make sure that it's on the gun tightly. All right, with that being said, let's shoot some of these 115 grain ball rounds, and let's try some Subsonics. All right, so what's interesting is I'm not really noticing a whole lot of gas in my face. Now we have some 147 grain Federal, and this is a standard ball, but look at that nose. That's blunt. So this would be about the same shape as a hollow point. All right, so these are going to be Subsonics. Let's see how these function. So the 147 grains shifted considerably from the point of impact where I'm aiming at the lungs. These are hitting considerably more low than with the 115 grain ball rounds. So when you set your gun up for suppression, make sure that you set it up so you're going to put it in the configuration you're most likely to use, especially if you're going to use something like this for self-defense. This little Copperhead's a lot of fun to shoot. I really get a kick out of this little guy. I mean, look at that. That's awesome. That's a lot of fun. More 115 grain Federal stuff. All right, I know what you guys are going to ask. How does the 80s hip fire? Let's find out. Let me try to line myself up with the target here. This is kind of a long shot for 80s hip fire. He gets a 100 for 80s hip fire. I was able to walk him right into the center of that challenge target. So yeah, oh, and I know a lot of you guys have asked me about that target that I was just shooting at, where they can get it. I do have a discount code down in the description for Challenge Target, and you can swing by and pick up one of those targets for yourself by using that discount code. Oh, this thing is just entirely too much fun. So the green dot of this MRO is still not quite growing on me. I'm just so used to red dot sights, but it's absolutely 100% functional, and it is working nicely on this Copperhead. Yeah, and this gun doesn't have hardly any recoil whatsoever. Now the In Lead We Trust barrel is finely gassed, and he tests every single barrel before he mails it, which is a nice touch given the fact they cost $400. Not inexpensive add-on. But an add-on that definitely seems worth the expense. Yeah, there you go. Tell me that isn't a cool little package. And I love the color. Brown's the new black. So here's that bolt release that's on the other side of the gun. I also want to point out that it does have a little hand stop here. This is one of those guns, either with the factory barrel or even with the longer, slightly longer In Lead We Trust barrel, you're going to want to make sure you know where your hands are. It has that little finger stop there, but you want to make sure when you wrap your thumbs around, especially with the factory barrel, you don't get it in front of the barrel. And that may be another purpose of that design of the muzzle, is to keep your finger away from that muzzle, which would seem to make some sense as well. So this is one of those guns you want to grab more or less around the magazine. And yeah, you can see those ambi controls now. So what do I think of the Copperhead? I think it's a really cool addition to the MPX line of firearms if you understand its purpose. Its purpose being it was designed to be the smallest of its type on the market, and I would say it's definitely there. I've had no problems with this one. I have no problems with my original one. We ran into a few problems with one of the guns that Jason picked up, a K gun, but that's certainly not been our standard experience with the MPX overall, and I think they're very, very popular. I know Taryn over at Taryn Tactical loves the MPX, and I can see why. It's a very nice shooting little gun. The downside, well, this one obviously doesn't have the modular rail system, so you're not going to mount a light on the side. You can do maybe something off to the side if you want to use it with a light. It doesn't have any sights integrated into it. If you want to run iron sights, you'll have to buy some external iron sights and mount to the pick rail, a monolithic rail across the top of the gun. And really the price. And I think that's what's kind of squashing this gun a little bit, is the price. It's not inexpensive. That, and if you want to suppress it, then you have to go out and spend another $400 for a barrel. I think that probably turns off a lot of buyers, and I can see why. But in terms of, you know, reliability, fit and finish, this thing is spot on. Guys, if you'd like to support us here at the Military Arms Channel, we're supported by you, our viewers. We don't take any money from the gun companies. We try to be as honest and unbiased in our opinions as we possibly can be, and that can only happen with your support. So there's a link down below. Please consider swinging by, checking out our Patreon page. If you don't like Patreon, we have Subscribe Star as well. Also, swing by and check out coppercustom.com. Thanks for 11 years of support, which is just about to be 12 years, and we'll talk to you guys soon.